Welcome back, everyone, to Screenfish Radio. I'm so glad you could join us this week as we are talking about Alex Garland's latest film called Men. And this week, I'm thrilled to have three wonderful women here with me: Jolie Featherstone, Catherine Erskine, and Amy Hayden. Thank you all for joining me.
This is so exciting.
To say how cool the last name is Featherstone. Like,
thank you.
I think you're like a superhero or something.
Oh, thank you.
Or a detective.
I can't take credit for it. You know.
She made it herself. She thought that it was.
Yeah.
came with the family. So.
Men tells the story of Harper, a young woman who, in the aftermath of a personal tragedy, retreats alone to the beautiful English countryside, hoping to find a place to heal. However, someone or something from the surrounding woods appears to be stalking her. What begins as simmering dread soon becomes a fully formed nightmare, inhabited by her darkest memories and fears. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. But ladies, honestly, I would love to know, what did you think of Men?
Who would like to go first?
Who wants to kick off this conversation?
Why don't you go ahead, Jolie, and then that way we can figure out what we want to say.
Sure. I'll start. I mean, I personally, I appreciated the film. I would say enjoy, but it's one of those films that I don't know if you enjoy it per se, but I appreciated it, and I thought it was very ambitious. I like Alex Garland's work. I liked Ex Machina. I liked Annihilation. I also liked his work as a screenwriter before with like 28 Days Later, and his work as an author when he wrote The Beach. So I definitely kind of followed his career, and when I found that he was making this film, at first I was a little bit up in the air, kind of thinking, oh, he's like a cis-het man making a movie about patriarchy. Okay, we'll see how this goes. But I thought it is a very well-made film. It's very ambitious, and I don't know that it reached its full potential, but I thought it was very ambitious and very well made.
Yeah, it was ambitious. Some parts I'm sure were created imaginary, but I honestly, like I said before, when Steve asked me to see a movie, I should know by now Steve's horror picks are not usually in the same vein as mine, but he asked me to go and I was like, sure, I think I'll bring Amy with me. And I had not seen a trailer, I had not seen a poster, I had not heard about it on the radio. If it's not on a streaming service right now, I'm basically not seeing it. So when we gathered our little child's popcorn and candy to go and watch this movie, I was not prepared for the artistry, one might say. I did enjoy like the backstory. Like I always like when people are trying to go somewhere to find themselves, because I'm like, you're gonna find yourself dead. It's never a good thing to go to a remote area just to sit in a giant house alone and think about things. Like, you wouldn't see me doing that very often. But knowing that she had this backstory and having it unravel as it's kind of we're going through, there were, man, I would never do it. I would never go out into the middle of nowhere and just think about stuff and go for walks alone in the woods, because I found that it had moments of like real creepiness, like when she was at the tunnel and she's looking down that tunnel and you just see daylight at the end, but the dripping and walking through, I was like, you're dumb, you should not do this. And then she finally gets chased and run out, like that kind of stuff. I feel like it built it up really nicely. Like it was a good creepy moment. I wasn't prepared for the nudity of the men at all. It's a little shocking. So if you're gonna go see this, know that there is a lot of male nudity and female nudity ish at the end. So that was a little like jarring. I was like, oh, okay, like why are we focusing on this on so much? But I guess being naked and a man was what the wholeness of being a man. I still don't understand what that was about, but it was pretty creepy. And then having her sister like trying to get involved, it did surprise me in ways. Like Steve did give me a hint that it was the same person playing all the characters of the men, which I thought was really cool, because when they have the bar scene and everyone's in there, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know how they did this. Did they have to do this in a million different takes to get all these people in there? But the creepiness was overwhelming. And the fact that she was just so easy to like, I don't know. There was a part at the end where she was running and the guy runs out and is like, no, stop, don't go. And I'm like, run the man over and keep going. Like, you don't know what's going on. So I don't really know, like, I don't claim to be a genius in these things. I really am just a horror movie fan, but I didn't really get the whole like one man is every man kind of aspect of it. And the whole birthing scene, the last 15 minutes of the movie, where I just felt like, yes, this is raw and artistic, but is it all just like, we've shown them so many penises, we should throw some vaginas in there somewhere so that it balances out? I honestly, that's how I felt. I'm like, why am I getting these close-ups of things that I don't want to? But during the birthing scene, I was like, oh, I see. Her ex is going to come through in one of these. And when that person who was doing all of the birthing was going through and had the broken ankle, and she cut the hand on the door, I was like, that ties in exactly to her last vision of what her ex-partner was looking like after he had taken his life. So honestly, I'm going to be completely honest. I need help kind of digging through that and seeing, like, is she thinking that all men are the same, including her ex-partner, and this is the trauma from the ex-partner, and what happened at the end? So it was a roller coaster, my friends.
It really was.
I think I'm the only one who read a synopsis before going into the movie. And I thought, this could be really interesting, because I've never gone to see a movie chosen by Steve for horror. And most of my horror movies I watch with Catherine. So a little different. And I generally like at the end of my movies to make sense, like walk away and I'm like, that makes sense. I get what they were doing there. Can't say I got that feeling walking away from this one. I was like, I don't know what the writers were smoking at the end of this one. But I mean, again, maybe I just need help walking through a more artsy film. I'm just more black and white. As far as the going through the woods on her own and the penises, I'm a psychiatric nurse. I see crazy man penis all the time. So it really didn't seem like a lot to me.
But have you seen a man birth another man through a vagina?
That I have never seen before. I've never seen penises turn into vaginas before, or grown men being birthed out of any of them. So that was a new experience. And I didn't even get the theme when you guys just said that one man is every man. This is the first time that ever even clicked to me. I guess I'm not very good at analyzing movies. Maybe I'll do better in the future, but this is the first one I've actually watched where I'm supposed to analyze it. So yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but yes, it definitely went in a different direction than I thought. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that people saying the film chosen by me.
The film forced upon us 3 females by Steve.
Like that's
the only male.
In Steve's defense, I had already seen it, and it reached out to me because I'd already seen it. So,
and honestly, I would have
seen it anyway. So,
because as a man, I needed to process this film. I needed to process this film in so many ways. I
don't know how would process this film.
Well, I will say, like, this is one of those films that I I actually really liked, but it's tough to recommend. It's tough to recommend because of how wild this cat's just nodding.
The subject matter, maybe.
Well, and for the record, Kat, you could have watched the finale through the Steve Norton method, which is this. Oh, is this still
Or
going on?
as in,
Checking my. Oh, is this
or
still
as
going
in
on?
other films, just fall asleep completely and pretend
for
I was
sure.
awake the whole
That's
movie.
another issue. But I'm
I
saying
did watch it like this.
I love that because it's not like your eyes are blocked by anything. Anyway, but that's
But
not
you're
what
just
I'm
like a
saying.
sense of security, like a shield. I can close my eyes at any second if I need to.
But I will say this. I thought the movie was beautiful. I mean, we could talk about the graphic things, but I mean, it was shot beautifully, and I thought every shot was trying to say something, and that impresses me. Like there was a lot of images in this movie, that were just really well done and well crafted. And Garland's like that. I didn't know he wrote The Beach. I had no idea.
Yeah, he wrote the book, like the actual novel. He didn't write.
Right.
I don't think he wrote the film, but he wrote the novel, which the film is based off of. Or sorry, he wrote the novel, which the film is based off of. But I think that's actually kind of an interesting thing because I too, when I wanted to see the film, but I kind of intentionally didn't read or watch much about it before going into it, and I kind of think it's obviously from a content warning perspective, maybe it is good to maybe read a bit about it before you see it. But if you don't have any concerns about that, then going in with as little background info as possible can make for a pretty interesting experience. But he said something in an interview that I thought was really interesting because he was talking about The Beach, like the novel that he wrote, and it ended up becoming this huge hit film. And he was saying that he was shocked when he found out people were reading The Beach or watching The Beach and seeing it as a celebration of backpacking culture. And in fact, he's like, no, I did not at all write it as a celebration of backpacking culture. If anything, it's a criticism of like the backpacking culture. And he's like, basically from then, I sort of see it as like, whatever I put out in the world, like whether it's a book or a film or what have you, I'm kind of like at peace with the fact that how other people react to it, it could be very different than what I initially intend, and that's okay. And it's all a valid way to watch the film. And I think that speaks to all of us. I think we all kind of had a different reaction to the film, and certainly the ending is not at all definitive. It's very open-ended. And I think in some ways he probably had fun with that, making it as open-ended as he did. I think he's kind of probably enjoying hearing everyone's theories. But it's just kind of interesting that that's sort of been a common thread throughout his career, that he might have, with The Beach, he put something out there and it became heralded as this big like voice of his generation, backpacking culture, and he's like, actually I was being very critical of that culture. And now he put out Men, and there's all sorts of kind of discussions and theories as to what it's saying and what he meant by it. And I think maybe now he's at a point in his career where he's kind of like, well, what you take from it is just as valid as what I wrote in it. So I think that's kind of an interesting theme in his career.
It's interesting, I thought, because you're right. Like, there's so many things about this film that got my attention, even down to like, I mean, obviously, it's being critical of men, and in any number of ways, which is actually an interesting point. I want to come back to this in a second, but one of the things I love about his work too, I think he uses biblical imagery in a lot of his work. And this one, pardon?
Church, yeah.
Yeah, well, the church, but Adam and Eve. Adam and
Mm-hmm.
Eve opens with the tree. She takes a thing and he says, the forbidden fruit. And
yeah, that you notice right away.
Is right away. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, no, I'm just kidding. And he laughs it off. But I mean, they keep coming back to the tree in the end. I think all the apples fall from the tree or something like that. Oh my gosh, which I'm just saying, the apple falls from the tree,
Doesn't fall far from the tree.
fall far from the tree, which could go into the theme of that. I hadn't thought of that until just a second. But it's interesting to me because he does these things with a twist, and this is like, so the Adam and Eve imagery specifically. Like, if you think about it, if this is a criticism of men, there's certainly a criticism of the church, and I don't know, this idea that maybe, or this idea of women being blamed or held down or something, coming into play. I thought that I think it's very interesting. Annihilation did this a lot too, but I want to talk about that film. But Annihilation takes these biblical images and twists them a little bit to sort of make his point. But I want to. So I read. Okay, I said this is the world we live in. I was going to say I read a review. I read a tweet. It's a tweet.
I read 140 characters.
I read 140 characters. It was really stressful for me. No, but the comment was interesting. Somebody said that they were really offended. It was a woman. I cannot remember who it was, quite frankly, but the comment stood with me. And she said that she was offended by the film because it was 2 hours of mansplaining. Of mansplaining the problem with men. I don't know whether what do you think of that? What do the three of you think of that? Like, as a man, I didn't think of it that way, but I want to know if that was actually the case. I
think it's I think a lot of the theme with like Garland and his films is very much like how it's perceived by the viewer. So I would definitely wouldn't take anything away from her reaction. I think that's very valid, and in some ways I could relate to it when I first found out that he was directing this film, and even in the first, I would say, quarter of the film, I was just kind of, I wasn't offended, but I was kind of like, I find this is a very interesting choice that we're having this cis-het men telling this story. It just kind of seems a bit tired to me in a way to have this story being told by a cis-het man. But when it was later on in the film, probably about halfway through, I kind of had this feeling of my perception sort of shifted, whereas before, I think what I found kind of tiresome about that is that oftentimes it's this a male director telling a story about gender supposedly from the perspective of the female lead. And then about halfway through, I started to think, oh, maybe this film isn't from her perspective. And that's when things kind of shifted for me. And I was like, oh, I don't think I am meant, or who knows? He seems very open-ended. So I don't know if I'm meant to watch it or think of it that it's from her perspective. And that's when things kind of shifted. And I ended up kind of having a bit of a different perception, that I wasn't watching him trying to tell this story through the voice or through the eyes of a woman. And I left kind of thinking it was more Alex Garland as a cis-het man making a comment, making perhaps a social critique around patriarchy and how hurtful and damaging patriarchy is, not only for women, but also very much so for men as well. And that's kind of how I left. That was my perception when I left the film. So that's kind of what I felt about it. But I wouldn't take anything away from her if that was her perception, and it is a very open-ended film, so I could understand it.
I could see how it's almost, I saw it really as broken relationships and trauma, and how, I don't know, there's maybe there is passive sexism in the sense that the police officer is yeah, whatever, it was just this, but then the female police officer is actually trying to take her seriously and help her out, where everyone else is kind of taking this into a joke. And in even the conversation with her and the pastor about have you ever thought about maybe how this is your fault? That kind of turn that's put onto women in any kind of situation where they have been threatened or taken advantage of or assaulted, there is always that one person who says, well, maybe if you hadn't done this, or do you think that you may have done, and even when it was her realizing, okay, this guy is insane and I have to leave, there is all that passive behavior towards women from usually men in the community. So I do agree that it's like a movie about men written by a man and like played by one man. But there is those themes kind of woven, and I think maybe they were just like at the surface, like that pastoral kind of guidance. That's a pretty like surface level sexist comment. Even like the little kid calling her like horrible name, and everyone at the bar kind of mocking her, and the one guy who's supposed to be the nice guy kind of being like, well, these things happen. So there's definitely sexism in it, but I don't know if it was overtly like a sexist movie. But again, like you said, it's open-ended and anyone can kind of really interpret whatever they want from it.
I feel like if we're looking at film as art, because I mean, it is a type of art, but your regular run-of-the-day, run-of-the-mill, films are very black and white. They're like a picture where you look at it and you know what's going on and you see the scene and it's very clear. And then you walk away and then you come to a modern art display and people are like, oh, I see this and I see this. And you're looking at it and you're like, I don't see that at all, because it's not clear. And I feel like that's what this movie is. It's like a modern art film, if that makes sense, if we can equate it to like physical film. And so when I look at this film, I don't see, and I guess it's just the way that I was raised. I mean, I had a good dad. I don't see the patriarchy in a lot of things. Like, I know that it's come up in society a lot. And when I looked at this film and I saw that preacher and I saw that guy in the thing, I wasn't like, oh, men are mansplaining or this is what men are doing. I'm like, that guy's kind of a jerk. Like an individual. It's not like, I think men are jerks. It's like that guy in particular is kind of a jerk. And oh, that kid, he was kind of a jerk too. Like, maybe there's something going on in this town, but I didn't see it. Just looking at it and not overthinking it in my seat watching it, I just took them as individual jerks, not as a commentary on men in society in general, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that does make sense. It's interesting because I like watching it, my reaction too, I was sitting there and I, like, as a man, I'm sitting there like, man, men suck. Like, man, we're the worst. So I'm watching this film, and as I left, I was trying to figure out, to me, like, I didn't feel it was mansplaining, because by the end, I felt like it was almost Alex Garland trying to figure men out. Like, the movie's called Men, so it's about men. It's not called Harper's Happy Holiday, which would be a very different film.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, I think where that person's like comment about sort of like, here's a man trying to mansplain a woman's experience under patriarchy. And I can get that. That's what I was kind of like feeling like, oh, this is such a tired notion. Like, I can totally get that. But then I think I mentioned, for me, my perception kind of shifted, and I think it was, I agree that I think it was less about, for me anyways, less about Garland trying to explain a woman's experience living in a patriarchal society, and it was more about describing like men's experience under patriarchy in a way, and the harm that it does to them. One scene that always it just sticks with me so much was like Jeffrey saying, oh, I'm the homeowner, I should go out there and like check on the, well, you know, check the surroundings for you. And she's like, no, you really don't have to, like, don't worry about it. And he's just like, no, I should do that. And then he just makes this offhand comment where he's like, oh, my father told me I had the makings of a failed military man.
Yeah.
I was only 7 years old. And then everything kind of goes bad for him after that. And I think that one scene, you know, just said so much about the portrayal of men in the film, that so much of them, whether it was their fathers, their town, their, you know, if it was like a more traditional religious upbringing, you know, were brought up in a patriarchal mindset. And again, kind of to your point, Amy, that it's not even about these men as individuals. Like Jeffrey is so lovely, and all these guys could have, you know, perhaps been really lovely people, but growing up surrounded in the mindset of patriarchy has maybe caused them to have a lot of inner pain themselves, which then they take out either on themselves or on the people around them inadvertently. That's kind of how I was reading it. And that, yeah, I think that's kind of how that one scene with Jeffrey, when he says that to me, said so much about what I interpreted Garland as trying to say. Like, you know, Jeffrey was just a kid, and his father's already like putting this burden on his shoulder of what a man should be and what a man should act like. And he's already a failure because he's a little kid and he's not living up to that standard of being a true man. But it is speaking to like that birth, like pain begetting pain, you know, his dad, obviously, if his dad is telling a 7-year-old this, I can only imagine how his dad grew up and so on and so forth, right? So that's kind of how I took it, was sort of like this sort of like a very pointed picture of how all of these men in this town and maybe men in general like grow up with a lot of this burden of patriarchy, which again just can cause a lot of inner pain, which comes out perhaps in not the most healthy ways, as we see in the movie.
Well, and all the men are different too. Like there's different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the full blown crazy man who's trying to assault her in the bathroom. But then there's just the guy in the bar, like Kat said, who's just sort of like laughs it off. Like there's different levels of crazy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
see, and like you said there, like to me, that's what justified the whole birthing scene. Because the birthing scene of men passing on to other men. Here's the next man. Here's the next man. Here's the next man.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like he was trying to not mansplain, but explain men.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a difference there, I think there's a difference there, because he's not trying to mansplain the female experience. He's trying to explain men.
I would totally agree with that. And I think you put in such a lovely, succinct way exactly how I felt around the movie. Is that I think going into it, I was kind of worried that it would be here's a man mansplaining to women how it feels to live as a woman in a patriarchal society, but really it's a man trying to, you know, explain men and the kind of situation that they grew up in as well.
It takes it right back to the beginning too, because like I caught the apple tree comment right away, and if you look into the fact that this stranger in the woods was becoming more tree-like as this movie went on, and it's like he was under the earth, he was living in there under the church, and kind of maybe was brought out by this woman entering the area, or if it's just something that he's just chilling on the regular. But
as you do,
you know, like I often sit in holes with branches coming out of my head. But he just got more and more almost older, more tree. And I don't know if he had something to do with the tree, or if there is that part of going back to the very beginning of creation of man. But I didn't know if he was like a demon, or if he was brought on by the church, or if he was the original. I don't know. What did you guys think of him?
Well, funny thing is, there's no makeup there. That's just what Rory Kinnear looks like. All the other scenes they use CGI to get rid of the tree.
Not enough moisturizer.
I am so sorry. I'm just going to plug in my laptop because it's about to die. I will be right
sure.
back. But I can hear everything you're saying. I'm just right here off camera for 1 second.
Sure.
Did you see that tree aspect though, and like him becoming almost like one with whatever the heck was going? I don't know how to explain it. He just reminded me, like, are we going back to First Man? Are we going back to they were doomed from the start?
Becoming to look like that symbol that was on the altar in the church.
Yeah, there was the altar as well, and I think he was under the church, under the altar, when he was having his dirt sit. But
he's having his dirt sit. That's the best explanation. He's having a dirt sit, as you do.
And is he like gaining powers from this church, or in order to do what he's doing, or is he some like ancient man?
I love that you brought up like the first man, or like the original man. I definitely read it as like kind of like a symbolic character as opposed to like, you know, a literal person. I agree with you. I think there was a lot of maybe like symbolism there about him being like the first man or the original man. I'm nowhere near knowledgeable or smart enough to know the full symbol, but I would agree with you that I kind of had that feeling as well, that he was kind of symbolic to very like kind of ancient, like original man sort of thing. And then that scene where like he like blows like the seeds and like the leaves onto her, it's almost like him, for me, I read it as him sort of like, I don't even know what I would call it per se, but like him almost opening her eyes to this kind of like symbolic world that you know he represents. But yeah, again, I am nowhere near knowledgeable or smart enough to articulate what it is, but I like that you brought that up, because I kind of had the same feeling as well, that there was a lot of symbolism there about him.
You see, this is why I needed the podcast on this, because I need to process these thoughts. I need to process.
He's like, I just saw a guy in the dirt.
Who became a tree.
Also, that scene though, where she, like when, like you described, like the tunnel scene where she's like singing in the tunnel and it's daylight on the other side, it's just such a primal fear for me in that moment. It's like everything about it, like the lack of vision, like it looks like it's daylight on this other side, but you are very aware that you're in this tunnel, so your field of view is very minimal, and like the sound, and like it was so primal, the feeling there. And then when she, you know, sees like the figure, and she runs, and then she takes the picture of the farm, and then you see him standing there. That for me is just like such a primal fear, like that notion of someone or something being there and you did not expect them to be there. It was such a primal fear that they tap into. Yeah. Nowhere to go. There's like this naked man standing there where seemingly moments before he was not. Yeah, it was very kind of like a primal fear. And that room as well, like I definitely think there was some sort of symbolism happening where she's back in the house and she's in that room that's almost completely windows, and you know the tree is outside and he's kind of like wandering around watching her out there. Again, very primal fear. Like I was watching it and I said to my friend after the film, I'm like, well, that film did nothing for my fear of looking out the window and seeing someone that shouldn't be there. And he's like, I know, right? Like it's just such a primal feeling of fear there. And I would love to like, I'd love to hear what you all felt about those scenes, and like if there's more like deeper symbolism there as well, because I definitely feel like there's so much rich symbolism or like historical symbolism there that I'm not aware of.
See, that's what I mean about this film, because I love that scene, and I was terrified but it's also a gorgeous scene. Like
Yeah.
just strictly looking at it, it's beautiful. Her in the tunnel, and the music, the call and response of that. I was like, this is I'm terrified, but this is like but it looks incredible. Like it really looks incredible. And I mean, in terms of symbolism on that, I have no idea. It feels rich.
Yeah,
I can't. That's one of
definitely.
those ones I can't hit.
Yeah. I like that you brought up, like, I actually didn't think of that, but that's such a perfect terminology, the call and response.
Mm.
I did not think of that, but I feel like that in and of itself says so much about that scene. Like I picked up on her, kind of vocalizing in that tunnel, and how that vocalization sort of was imbued into the score. Like even in later scenes of the film, they kind of kept coming back to those notes. But I didn't think about like, the call and response aspect to it. I think that really perfectly describes that scene. And I wonder, even, I definitely think there's symbolism there too, just within the use of that sound and that music.
Yeah.
Well, she was at that point just gaining her life back, right? And trying to heal after this terrible divorce. And there was something, like you said, beautiful going on in that tunnel with the song. And that man coming out of nowhere, you seeing him out of nowhere, disrupted that.
Right.
And the big fear came in. So it was kind of the theme of the whole movie, where she was trying to make her life beautiful again, or she was trying to regain something beautiful in her life. And then this happens and disrupts it. So I don't know.
Love that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the trauma, it's like, trying to find peace after such terrible trauma, but that trauma just finds ways to manifest itself, and it disrupts that process of trying to find peace and beauty in the world.
Men.
Here-
I always think of, like, as soon as I saw the windows and the tree and just how many the windows that place had with no coverings, I always see that in like movies or art or anything as almost like a sense of vulnerability, like you're safe but you're not safe, and there's always someone watching you, someone, whether it's a naked man through a window under a tree, or society, or the demands of who you are and what's expected of you. But always in movies, when I see big windows, I just see vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I lock my doors before I go to sleep.
Again, talking about, if this, my friend and I were saying, like, if this film was directed by a woman, how would it be different than how it turned out? And I remember saying, like, honestly, the only thing I need to say is that scene with the windows, like how, like, I think, especially you ladies are big horror film fans too. Like, I feel like we've seen enough horror films and have lived long enough to know you don't really want to sit in the room that's all windows by yourself and not be aware of what's going on behind you.
Right? I'm literally sitting in a room with huge bay window with no curtains because I haven't found any yet, looking into a creepy park with the lamps out. But yeah, like I just think it's like people are scrutinized, people are being watched even when they think that they're in charge and in control. The government. No, I'm just kidding. It made me think too of the end when she's sitting on, like, she's just saved herself from all of this trauma and the ex and the everything. I mean, I would be put in a psychiatric hospital after all of that, but and she's just
I'll
sitting,
take care of you.
right? She's just sitting on the steps when her sister approaches her, and she's just sitting. And I often think, like, I don't want to get too like hoity-toity about women or anything, but like that person, like her, she's gone through all this, but she has to now again pick herself back up and get back to work and get back to her like life, because that's what's expected of you. And there's a strength in that, but there's also a sadness in that, like, I had to deal with that, and now my sister's coming. There's a trail of blood, but it's like, hey, glad you could make it. Excuse the mess.
I think she should have allowed her sister to come a lot sooner when she first wanted to. This movie could have been very different if she had just reached out and accepted the help and didn't try to be the hero. I'll heal myself. I think she needed to have that sister come.
Yeah, you need that
My
support.
2 cents. I mean, I think that's a good commentary in general in life. If you're going through stuff, I think you should reach out for help when it's offered.
I would have been like, heck yeah. I never should have come here.
The movie would have been a lot shorter. It would have just been called like Me.
Some guys we met at a bar.
Well,
yeah, it's crazy. Like, I don't know what the ending was, and I know she's appears safe, but like, men.
that's it. But see, that was one of the things I wanted. Like, they don't tell you. Like, from what was your response to that? She's sitting there with her ex-husband or ex-boyfriend or what have you, and he basically says, "What are you gonna do?" The next scene, she's sitting by herself. Do you think she kills him? Do you think she lets him off the hook? Do you think she should have done either? What I was wondering what you thought.
Lets him off the hook. Like, what do you think he's doing in there? Mopping up?
I don't know. She looks the same in
with
the
this
final
busted
scene.
ankle.
She looks the same in that final scene as she does in that room. She's not covered in extra blood. She's holding the same axe. To me, I mean, maybe I missed something, but to me, she looked the same. I sat there and I went, I don't know what she did. Maybe as a man, I didn't want to know. She hacked him to pieces.
Maybe it was her getting her power back. Maybe she was able to face him in a way that she didn't get to because he was all like earlier, but maybe she got to face that, and maybe that's part of her healing journey in the sense that she's like, F you, I just fought you off and 7 others of you, I'm gonna be okay. I don't know. Maybe they just needed space to think about what they're gonna do. Move back in, try again.
We'll give it another go. I didn't get the sense that they got back together. I will say.
Well, there you go. That knocks one theory out.
But wasn't he dead?
Yes, he was. But after the point of 4 men giving birth to other men, I just threw reality out the window at that point.
That's true. I find it hard to relate this back to a commentary on society because of that last scene where it was so ridiculous that you're like, okay, nothing makes sense anymore. I don't even know what this is. The movie went off and Catherine and I sat there in silence for a second, and then we just started laughing because we're like, we don't know what else to do.
We just walked to our cars and we're like, okay, see ya. But if it's talking about that generational like male thing, then he would have again been a figment or the what is that word? Not antithesis, but like he would have been I'm gonna take this down to gaming, like the final boss, right? Because he was her true trauma. And so she had to go through all these other men, as women do have to go through all of these other passive, aggressive, sometimes kind and bumbling, but screw up stuff anyways, type of guys to be able to find out what the root issue and the root cause is. So for me, it was just, she was just done at the end. She was like, all right.
And she walked away.
Yeah, like 5 stars. This Airbnb was pretty okay. A little bloody.
Would not recommend.
Renter beware, there are penises.
I think it's really cool. Like I'm glad that I saw this in the theater because I think it's one of those films where I kind of appreciated hearing the collective response to it. Like the reactions from the audience were really interesting. Like there was, I forget which scene it was. I think I mentioned this to you, Steve, where there was like one of the scenes, I can't remember what it was, and there was a girl like laughing, like a full like belly laugh. And then there was and then during like the birth scene, when it wasn't the first birth, it was like the third, we're in the third birth in, and I heard some guy being like, oh my god, what is happening? Like you could hear the sheer like horror in his voice. And like at the end, so like my friend and I are sitting there, we're both just sitting, just in silence watching the credits go by, and kind of people watching as everyone was leaving. And like some people were kind of like nervous laughter, like, yeah, that was weird. And some people were like, and a lot of guys were like, what the F was that? That was awful. Like, it was just like so interesting to hear everyone's reactions. Cause yeah, I think truthfully it is such an open-ended ending. And yeah, the certainly like the birth scene is that film just going full force in Garland's vision. Like you could tell there was probably very little creative limitations there. They kind of just let him do what he wanted to do. And yeah, like how I interpreted that scene was, yeah, just very symbolic, as you all have said, like about trauma, and just like that the birth I took as like symbolic of like intergenerational trauma and like intergenerational pain, specifically because the film is titled Men. I saw it more from like a man's perspective. Like again, I always kind of go back to that example, but like Jeffrey saying about how his dad made that comment to him when he was little, and you can tell it still holds so much weight in his self-worth and like his self-esteem. And that's kind of how I saw the birth, was sort of like a very literal and graphic symbolism of like that intergenerational trauma, or like the trauma that men kind of consistently every generation has to kind of go through and deal with, living under these like old notions of patriarchy and stuff. And yeah, the final ending I thought was interesting because when she is sort of forced to reckon with that, like you said, the core trauma there with her ex-husband, like to me, I guess I kind of read it as her sort of finding peace, like working through that trauma.
Like the ducking.
Everyone's
There's a man. There's a man.
There's a man behind you.
There's a man behind me. Men, everyone.
It's like a horror movie. Behind you.
And oh my god, we should have done a prank actually. Like, had John come up behind me.
Just standing.
Yeah, that's I kind of like, as you all have said, like I saw it as symbolic of trauma, and like the sort of that final like I don't even know if I want to call it a fight. Like that was such those scenes where I too like how they kind of pieced it together. It didn't give you everything all at once. It's sort of, you had to watch the film to figure out what had happened before, and those flashback scenes are just so agonizing to watch because it's just such a toxic, abusive situation, and that's, you can tell where the core trauma for her is. And so having to kind of reckon with that at the end and sort of find acceptance and peace, and a willingness to move on from that, I guess that's kind of how I interpreted it. But yeah, it doesn't explain why there was blood on the ground or why there was an axe involved. Like that, I have no answer for, but I think that's just Alex Garland toying with us at this point.
Well, it was funny watching it in that moment when they sit down on they sort of sit on a couch together, if I remember correctly at the end, and he sort of looks at her and he's like, so, and I sat there and I'm like, okay, as a man, I see what he's saying, and I got this whole passing down of the patriarchy, and we talked about it in our group chat before. I think it's the French poster that the tagline is "Evil begets evil," which I think is a fascinating line. So on one level, I'm watching it. Oh, there he goes again. On one level, I was watching it and I like really appreciated. Like I felt like it was almost an apology. Like it was almost like, women, I'm sorry, but at the same time, I didn't want them to land on it as an excuse. And I'm sitting there, I'm like saying, okay, yeah, like this is true. What it means to be a man has shifted, and consistently shifted from, like, you just even look at the way it's been portrayed in film and pop culture since the 80s. Like it's totally different. But we can't, as a man, I can't sit there and say, well, it was handed down for me from culture. Sorry. I don't think that's a valid thing. I think an apology, like maybe this is just me. I wanted it to be an apology. I wanted it to be like, listen, you know what, with all these other films we've seen about terrible, terrible men, I felt like this was trying to flesh it out a little bit, but at the same time, it's not. It shouldn't. It's not an excuse. And then with her, I like what you said there. I think it was Kat that said it. This idea of, I hadn't actually considered this idea of what built to him, like him coming through three or four generations of men. That was an interesting point. Certainly, I could see that her sitting alone was some form of strength, independence, freedom. But I sat there and I was like, is it that she just sort of gave up, or is it that it's like, I'm going to walk away? Because
she have a meeting at 9 a.m. on Monday that she can't miss.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a man will take her job.
I like that the sister was pregnant. I thought that
was cool.
I was like, okay, you know,
that better be a girl.
Yes, so help me. And only one of them, not four generations of them in there.
Yeah. You think your birth's gonna be crazy? You should have seen what I just saw.
You have seen nothing. I have stories for you. No.
Like I love our discussion. I think that you all have given me different perspectives on the film that I'm gonna think about. I'm gonna mull over tonight. So I too am probably gonna have a lot of questions afterwards that I won't think of until later. But I think I would just note, I think a big success of the film, or something that kept people watching, was how strong the performances were by Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear. I think if those performances hadn't been as strong as they were, a lot of people would have been like, what the heck am I watching? I don't feel invested in this. This is getting way too much. And they might have walked out. For example, a film that I saw years ago, where I literally experienced that, I saw people walking out of the theater, was Cosmopolis by David Cronenberg. And I might have a different experience if I were to watch it now, but at the time, I too remember feeling like it felt a bit of a slog, like to get through, like kind of like, okay, like obviously I'm not one to normally like walk out of a film, but I did feel at the time like, okay, this is like kind of, I feel like I'm trudging through this, but I'm gonna stick it out. And I watch other people leaving, whereas men, as intense as it got, as as wild as it got, I don't think I saw any of them leave. And I think a big part of that was how strong those performances were. Like those really, like, you have two actors carrying this film, with as well as her sister, who's excellent in her performance. We just don't see her as much on screen. But those two did such an incredible job. I felt so invested in watching it for them. And even like speaking towards Rory Kinnear, like that, the fact that he's portraying all the men in this film, with the exception of her ex-husband, it could have come off, I think, very gimmicky and very like kind of tacky, but it didn't end up coming off that way. It came off very, I would say, powerful. So yeah, I think a lot of the strength of the film is also in part due to these actors giving such great performances.
I remembered what I was gonna say. And I agree with you, they were great performances. I was kind of like internally chuckling at your experience in the theater, and I wish kind of we had the same, but it was basically me and Amy in an empty theater with a young couple in the very back row, probably making out.
Probably not
entire
paying
movie.
attention to the movie.
I wanted to turn around at points because I'm like, you're shuffling. Do you not see the penises? Is that not killing the mood? But it was literally just us and no one in front of us but the big screen.
Wow. Okay, that's a whole other experience right there.
Coming in not knowing what this movie is about, I'm like, oh, interesting.
Well, I mean, it's the perfect date movie, so good on that couple for sitting
Yeah, I mean,
back there.
if you can make out through that, you'll make it, kid.
Yeah.
You can make out through anything if you can make out
Right?
through men.
I feel like if I were to watch this film with Sean after him watching Midsummer with me, he'll probably be like, okay,
Never
yeah,
again.
Midsummer was like, that was like a Disney
Yeah.
movie, you know, like after then watching men being like, why are you making me watch
I'm like, period blood in the juice, no problem.
I did not see that movie. I was going to, and Catherine said, do not watch this movie. She was like, Steve made me watch that movie and it was terrible. So I didn't end up watching it. So I don't.
It's fair. It's yeah.
Podcast should be movies Steve forces women to watch.
Made me watch.
It
I
was an
don't know what the
experience.
movie's. Well, okay, I was gonna say in general, I don't know what the movie's like before. This time I did, and I warned you. I warned
You
you.
said I said I
The
don't
last
like
20
movies
minutes.
that are like
Crazy. I
are like,
forgot
you know,
about-
Saw or like that torture, like
Gory.
yeah. So you're right. People birthing out of vaginas and ripping apart isn't really like Saw.
I said it was like Cronenberg. That's what I said. It was like Cronenberg.
I think
No,
that's a
that's-
very fair like thing. Like I could see Cronenberg in that for sure. Yeah, the body horror aspect of it, absolutely.
Thank you, Jolie.
No, this
Thank you very much.
who's this Cronenberger man?
Although-
Oh, did he do Evil Dead?
no, that was Sam Raimi.
So
Cronenberg did like The Fly.
Oh yeah, that was before my time. Actually, it wasn't. It was
Existence.
1986.
Still,
but
he had a
you
movie
must have been
come out,
like
this week, last week. People
Yeah.
walked out of it.
looking through.
Crying
he,
for the future.
I think the main thing about Cronenberg is that like he can make even like I'm not usually a squeamish person. He can make even the least squeamish of people squeamish with his movies. And it's not even like I hear you. I am not a huge fan of things like Saw or like Hostel where
Yeah.
it's torture for the sake of I don't know what. He actually his is like body horror. So even though it may or may not be like torture, it just makes you very uncomfortable and very like squeamish. And he's obviously all of his films like are I think almost at least the ones I've seen are all basically social critique through body horror. But even I myself, and I don't consider myself super squeamish, like I'll watch Cronenberg's movies and be like, okay, yep, that just I need to just watch a Pixar movie after this or something.
Good Lord, he did Jason X,
What?
Huh?
which is
David
one of the worst
Cronenberg?
Jasons.
He directed.
It's when he's in
Jason X?
space. Yeah.
I'm
Oh
shocked.
Gosh. David Cronenberg directed Jason Goes to Space.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Wait. Where is he? It says David Cronenberger movies, and Jason X is
Cronenberg.
on there.
He's not.
Yeah, but it
he's
says
not a
director
dinner.
was James-
He's not a dining. Dinner out. You don't get to
Listen,
grab a Cronenberger.
I just don't know why it says that it's his movie, but it was directed by James Isaac. Like, where is he?
He may have produced or wrote it. He could have done that.
Well, it was terrible.
And anyway,
Anywho's it's
we hate on Cronenberger all of a sudden because he did Jason X, but
he made a cameo.
oh, he's in it.
Oh.
That makes more sense. That makes
He
more
has been like he has had cameos in films, so that makes sense.
It says David Cronenberg forced Jason X producers to cast him and rewrote all his scenes.
Sure.
Interesting.
I mean,
Whatever.
you got to pay.
I haven't seen any of his movies, but
You got to pay for your pool somehow.
right. I would force somebody to cast me in Friday the 13th if I had a chance, or
You go.
Nightmare on Elm Street. A spooky, like I'm more like spiritual things scare me. I feel like I could beat a guy trying to get through my letterbox, but I don't know if I could fight a demon. Although, in a sad reality, there are more scary people out there than there aren't. So.
You could just slice their fingers through a cheese grater or something like it was in this.
Yeah, or like
sort of hang it off and just like. So help me! I thought that another hand was going to grow on there, and he'd have like. I really thought that something, but no, it's just
like a hand within a hand, like when you cut a worm's tail off.
You have like two hands like hooked on or something. I at that point, I didn't know what the heck.
Holding hands.
Touching, reaching out.
I loved it. Like I clicked in right away when they were doing the letterbox that I'm like, oh, this is the X coming, because the flashbacks to his death. Do you think it was a suicide, or do you think he fell trying to get in on the other balcony?
Well, didn't he explain that he fell?
Someone said he ran out onto the balcony, and it looked like he was going down to the balcony to get in, but he did threaten to kill himself.
He did, but I thought he had said to her in the end when they were talking. I could be wrong.
Oh, maybe.
Explained to her that he slipped or something.
Yeah, that's another question from the film that I think is I don't know the answer to, and I feel like that's another element of the film that Garland was kind of purposely being a bit like open-ended on it, because he we know, like you said, when she recounts it, the neighbor said, oh, he was running through, he's trying to get through to jump back down onto your balcony and get back in the house after she had told him to get out. But then he also did say, like, he very much threatened her and said, I will kill myself and it will be on you and you're gonna have to live with that for the rest of your life. So it is kind of open to me. I think it's sort of open to what I think it's like sort of purposely they don't answer it clearly as to what it was, and it's kind of up to each person's like interpretation. Like if I do think like him, the way that scene, like again, those flashback scenes were the scariest parts of the movie. Again, Amy, as you said, like real people are really like truly like the monsters and the villains of the world that scare us. Like he was very pointed in what he said to her. Like that truly is such a violent thing to say to someone. Like, I'm gonna kill myself and you're gonna live with that forever. It's your fault.
Who's trying to control somebody else and their decisions are going to try to manipulate. And so I don't think, I mean, I know it's a film, so I guess we don't know the intention of what the writer wanted for this character. But I think if that was a real life person and he was saying like, I'm going to kill myself and it's all your fault, I would just roll my eyes and be like, yeah, right. He is. Like, he's just trying to manipulate. He has no intention of killing himself. I think it was just unfortunate that whether he was trying to get back in the apartment or whatever, that did happen. And then that guilt, I guess, did get transferred onto her, even though it wasn't her fault, obviously, because even though it wouldn't have been her fault in any situation, that she is going to carry that with her, that being the last thing that he had said to her.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like how you said, like it's such a manipulation tactic, like that he was using, like you're trying to control someone's decisions and control someone's like decision making. That's probably the biggest way you could manipulate them, to do what he did. And then, like you said, like him making that threat and then felt like potentially just like accidentally falling off, like no matter how it ended, there for sure there would have been lasting trauma for her after everything they just went through and then that happening. Yeah.
And having that wonder and
Mhm.
not knowing on her end. Well, if you like weird birthing and naked tree men, screen it.
Let's get to that. Man, screen it or skip it.
Oh gosh.
This is a tougher one than I thought it was going to be. I'm not gonna lie. Because it's not that, like, I mean, I can't speak for any of you, but to me, I thought it was really well made. It's a really well made film, but it's so hard to recommend. It really is, just because of the way that it unfolds. So what do you think?
I think
There
if
is
you
some-
go ahead, Kevin.
No.
Okay, I was just gonna say that I think if you go to the movies for entertainment value and you want to go in and you want to see a good movie, I would say skip it. If you are an artsier person who wants to go and try to find these nuggets of what the writer's trying to say or trying to glean themes from it, then maybe see it. If somebody makes you go.
Somebody makes
But-
you go. Like Steve.
But like Steve, no. Yeah, if you're a film person and an artsy person, I would say maybe go. But if you're just your average Joe moviegoer like me who likes to just go and be entertained, I would say there are better films out there to use your time. There's so many great films, you can't watch them all. So I would say skip this one.
It's not Jurassic World. Let's put it that
It's
way.
not direct.
If
Let's say that.
you thought you were going to see Jurassic World and you end up in the wrong theater, you're in for a ride. Let's put it that way.
The people being ripped apart could be dinosaur related.
It was
the way I
raptor inflicted.
If you just watch this movie and hum, I mean, it could be anything.
Well, I mean,
Watch this.
screen it or skip it, or you could do this. That's still screening.
Screen it through the protection of your hand. I honestly don't know what to say about this thing. Like, I hated Midsummer, and I was like, garbage it. Like, I was definitely like your partner. And I was like, this is the worst. But the good thing is that if you get tickets for free, go see it. I mean, it'll give you something to talk about. Not a gift card you've been wanting to spend. If you want to be one of those people, I don't know. There's so many things I could say. If you want to believe that some of those people are like, I'm really into deep thinking, artistic horror movies. Like, if you don't get this, then you just don't get art. Like those kind of people.
Like The Godfather?
If you're a man who thinks that you know everything.
How dare you show me this the day of my daughter's birthday?
You didn't get this, man. You're just not smart if you don't get this movie, dude. I find it really hard because like it is kind of like it is a good movie, but if you're squeamish and you do have a problem with nudity, don't see it, because you're going to see nudity. You're going to see very up close things that you never thought you needed to see. But it is a fun movie to kind of just chew on a little bit. Like if you're gonna see it, go with not chew on.
Well, I was wondering about.
If you're gonna go see it with friends, and go see it at a time where you can like go out after for apps and drinks and just discuss it, because it does open up some interesting conversations like what we've had here. But maybe watch a trailer, see if you're interested.
Read a couple of reviews, do your thing, do some research.
Read the what's that thing that breaks down all of the there are these many swear words and this many penises, this many fake vaginas. Remember what I'm talking about? There used to be a Christian website that would do that, where like parents would like look at it.
Kidsinmind.com, but that's yeah.
Yeah. And then when you would rent the VHS at Rogers, it would have that on their like swear count. I think it's fun to go if you want to just have a good time and like have a discussion afterwards. The movie won't be a good time. The discussion and appetite.
You want to have some fun and some laughs. Take a night.
But if you're
off.
super sensitive and squeamish, maybe skip it.
Just a casual Sunday matinee.
I went on a Tuesday. Oh no, I went on a Thursday. Amy dropped out her battery.
Sunday matinee with the seniors who want to avoid the crowds. And
you go for the Christian chicken after church, and then you had to watch.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's a fine line to walk between skip it and screen it.
Yeah, I hear you. I always try to have like, I think at least I always try to have a definitive answer for screen it or skip it. I always try to, have a definitive choice, but this one truly is very challenging. Again, like I think I echo a lot of what you all have said. It is a very intense film, and it does deal with some really, like intense subject matter. So I think quite a few people could find it triggering at points.
Mm-hmm.
So I am, as much as I would tell people like, yeah, go see it and go in not knowing anything, after having seen it, like, we have, we're looking at intimate partner violence and abuse. We're looking at like all sorts of manner of things that could be very, very harmful for some people, very distressing for some people to watch. So maybe it is helpful to kind of at least have a little bit of an idea of what it is for you. But I too also struggle with the fact that I would say, yeah, I agree with you guys. This one is probably the hardest one so far, where I don't have a definitive screen it or skip it. I think if you appreciate film as a medium, I would 100% screen it. The cinematography is beautiful. The use of the score and the sound is incredible. The performances are so strong. It's an ambitious film. Again, doesn't always, I think, reach its full potential, like hit all the marks. Like, doesn't always stick the landing sometimes, but it is very ambitious. And I really applaud any director that goes after their vision and stays true to their vision. So I would say screen it in that case. But if kind of like, as Amy said, like if you would rather have something like we all, time is such a valuable, precious resource, that if you'd rather go see something that is entertaining and uplifting, definitely skip it. It's probably not the most uplifting film. So this one's a little bit tough. I would say if you liked Midsummer, if you liked Mother, if you liked In Fabric, screen it all the way. If you hated those films, you'll want to skip it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, base it on those films.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I'd say bring the family, instead of going to see Minions, take them to see Men. Why not see Men instead of Minions? No, I think that's the best way to describe it. I think it depends on the style of film you're interested in, because I'll be honest, I thought this was a good film. I thought it was smart.
It is very well made film.
I thought it was well made. I thought it was smart. I thought that as much as I hated the gore, because as uncomfortable I was with the gore, it didn't feel random, which I appreciated that. Like, I thought it was well made. And as a man watching this movie about men, first of all, I did not feel any better about my gender, which I definitely despise right now.
Were you hoping to?
I didn't think that there was going to be, it'd be nice if there was one guy that wasn't awful, but
that's what we think every day.
I know. I feel
only there was one guy that wasn't awful.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I feel like I need to apologize for my gender every time I talk about this.
I think this is really cool. But I like that word though that you use, Steve, like uncomfortable. It is an uncomfortable film. It's definitely purposely there to challenge you and kind of push you a bit and provoke some thoughts, provoke some feelings. It's not a comfortable film in any way, shape, or form. And there's value to that, right? Like there's absolutely value to that. And I would agree with you that like the graphic imagery, at least from what I can recall, because it's been a while now since I've seen it, but from what I recall, it was used mindfully, like in service of the vision of the director. It wasn't like Saw or something where it's just they're just throwing it out there left, right, and center for whatever reason. So I would totally agree with you on that. And I also love that like you yourself are such like an open-minded moviegoer and provide like a very like enjoyable space for both men and women to discuss films like this, because it is an uncomfortable film, and like we said, it does deal with stuff that can be very triggering for people. So yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, and I personally appreciated that it did make me uncomfortable at times, and it did kind of like challenge me at times. But yeah, I didn't mean to direct. I just really like that use of the word uncomfortable, because I think that is a good kind of way to describe the film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciate that, and I think that but I like you guys were saying, like you were all saying, what I love is the conversation afterwards. I love this. I'm so thankful for you all being a part of this, because I love that this to me makes the film worthwhile. And I didn't think the film was bad. Kat, you and I were talking about this before you saw it. This is not torture porn to me. This is not gore for gore's sake. You see, like there is gore, but it is hard for me to wave the flag of everybody's got to see this, because it is a ride. So I honestly, even before this started, I'm like, I don't know how to land on this. I think though, Jolie, you hit it well when you said, if you're into Mother and these other films, then yeah, this is a film that's really interesting.
And I like that you're kind of warning on, like, this could be triggering to some viewers, especially when you've had partner violence and trauma in that respect. So read up on it and then decide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It is I totally agree with everything that you guys have said. I love this conversation, and echoing what you both said, the discussion is just as valuable as watching the film, because I've learned a lot. You guys have brought up so many different perspectives that I didn't have after watching the film, and I just know I'm going to be up tonight being like, oh, I need to watch it again so I can like see all these different points that you guys brought up.
We've sent her back. She's going back.
I know. They're a late showing, but I really do. At first, I thought this might be it's rare, but there are times when I've seen a movie where I'm like, really appreciate it. I'm so glad I saw it. Don't really think I'll revisit it or want to revisit it, but having this discussion has made me want to revisit it now that I have these different perspectives from all of you. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you all. And absolutely, Jolie, I couldn't have said that better myself. Thank you all for helping me process this one as well. I really needed this. There are probably more times this may come up because we'll talk about it together, I'm sure. But no, thank you so much. Thank you for all three of you for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. I guess this is the time. This is the place where I normally would. I ask people how people can connect with you. If there's ways that you want to promote your stuff. What Jolie? I know that Jolie, you're on the Twitterverse.
I'm on the Bird app. I am at TO Film Files on Twitter. So yeah, feel free to connect anytime. I also write. I have a blog which is in desperate need of being updated. And I do sometimes write for Wiley Writes, but you can find all of that on Twitter.
Excellent.
I myself have enough people in my life. Don't contact me.
If you'd like
Contact
to,
Steve.
If you'd like to stand outside of Kat's window, her address is.
Yeah, there's no curtains. You can scare the crap out of me. Then I'll talk to you. Then you're interesting.
We'll just get a mannequin and just put it out in the front yard with trees.
They're selling these big Batman outs at the Cineplex near me, so we can get one of those.
Yeah, if you just put it on your shoulders, don't put it on the main floor because then you're just scaring my neighbor.
Fair.
But they have curtains. And you can contact me through my window between the hours of 1 and 5 a.m.
Oh no. Kat wakes up at 3 a.m. and there's Batman staring at her. Robert Pattinson.
And be like, I'm a Marvel girl. Get out of here.
Yeah. That's the real
Yourself
concern. Oh my goodness. For you all, thank you so much. Honestly, I really appreciate it. To you at home, you can find follow us wherever podcasts are available, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all these great places. You can follow us on YouTube. Look for Screenfish, where we have lots of interviews with industry professionals, as well as amazing conversations with amazing people just like this. If you have ventured into the world of men and you would like to have some conversation starter questions, you can download Fishing for More. If you go to the podcast page at screenfish.net, you can download those and help get the conversation started where you are. We will be back next week, and I am so excited for that. But thank you all again. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.
Thank you.